My name is Bastien Sachet, and I'm the CEO of Earthworm Foundation. Earthworm is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is the regeneration of the soils and the forests of our planet. We've done this for over 20 years by working with companies that are committed to change and helping them answer three key questions. In this series, we will discover the women and men who are asking these questions. Join me to learn more about what drives them and their ideas to regenerate our world. Today we have a bit of a special interview because we're doing it remotely with Marco Gonçalves. Marco is in Luxembourg and I'm sitting here in Switzerland. And I've got the pleasure to welcome him in our interview series. He's the Chief Procurement and Hazelnut Company Officer, member of the Ferrero Executive Board. And we've been working with Marco for about 10 years. Huh? Marco, we met when you were working at Nestlé at the time, just at the beginning of the Greenpeace crisis. Marco's worked for different companies from Unilever, Nestlé, to now being part of the board of Ferrero, which, as we know, is one of the biggest Italian family companies. But before we go into hazelnuts and responsible sourcing, Marco, how does a Brazilian boy comes and work in Luxembourg and in procurement?
Look, I'm very proud, really, as I start very early when I was only 15 years old in Brazil. As an administrative support in a procurement department in a local dairy company in São Paulo. I moved to Unilever, where I had a more than 20 years career. After that, I moved to Nestlé in Switzerland, again, a different experience. And then I ended up in Ferrero because I thought this would be my kind of last step of my career. I've been now for almost 15 years in Western Europe, living in Western Europe. And from here, we have one perspective of responsible sourcing, but it's not the perspective, it's one perspective. So coming from a developing country, I also understand the other side. So
maybe for those who don't know so much, when you say responsible sourcing, what do you mean exactly in practice?
Ferrero is, again, it's a different approach because it's a family company with long-term perspective. So let me start by saying we do not source raw materials. What we do is we develop and we nurture value chains. And this is extremely important because only by doing this, by having a long-term perspective, developing and nurturing value chains, we can really make a meaningful impact on the ground. And this helps us really to work with the developed partners, work with partners, influencing the partners in the right direction. So this provides a very, very positive environment in making the impact on the ground.
Why did you keep the stability? And this is something that struck us when we started to work on palm. These were your historical suppliers for decades, supplying palm oil for the Nutella, for example. Why that?
Because it is part of the way we do business, right? So at the end of the day, to deliver the products that we deliver with outstanding, unique quality, but not only the product, but the experience that we want to deliver to consumers, you must develop fundamental capabilities in the way you manage the business.
Somehow you're not putting sustainability in a separate box. It's just an extension of quality?
I think you are absolutely making the right point. It's for us, it's just another dimension of quality, right? So we need to develop the value chains, and then responsible sources embedded in the way we develop these value chains. And it's seen as another dimension of quality. Absolutely correct.
We can see that a lot of processes and a lot of charters and policies are put in place. What do you think is the key ingredient to put it in place? And maybe a more challenging question: why do we still have so many issues? We still have child labor in hazelnuts, in cocoa. Regular reports point at large corporations for that. Where do you think the challenge lies, or the gap lies?
So look, I think this is a fundamental question, and the way we see responsible sourcing in our value chains is as a journey, because at the end of the day, by understanding where the stuff comes from, then you understand the conditions on the ground, and some of these conditions are endemic, right? So the way we approach this at Ferrero, but also my personal view to this is it's a journey and it's a continuous improvement it's a continuous improvement mindset, right? Can we solve alone all the issues on the ground? The answer is absolutely not. It's not about ensuring zero non-compliance, because there will be always, value chains are a living organism, right? So it's moving as we speak. The value chain is changing, right? So in hazelnuts, without being specific, we had a few suppliers five suppliers that were not willing to embark in the traceability journey, and we made a decision to put suppliers on hold. And we call on hold, so we don't even call delisting, because they're not delisted, they're still there. And if they change their mind, and if they are willing to embark in our journey aligned with the Ferrero Hazelnut Charter, then of course they are more than welcome. So this is the mindset. This is what we call by influencing suppliers.
So today you're leading that journey. You're on the journey on many raw materials. What do you think is the biggest gap or the biggest challenge you have within the company to be able to implement the change?
The challenge, in fact, are more on the ground. So each commodity has extremely challenging conditions. If you talk about cocoa is one, hazelnut is a different one. The challenge is really to understand the root cause behind these issues. I remember still from a few years back when I started working with cocoa, that child labor is clearly one of the main challenges in this commodity. In West Africa, one of the main findings was that there were people, the children, they didn't have a birth certificate available. So, when you don't have a birth certificate, you cannot enroll in a school. And then if you're not in a school, you have to go somewhere. And then eventually go with your parents to the cocoa plantation. So this is the logic and the root cause that you need to find, and then to start working with partners to tackle.
Do you find time yourself to go in the field sometimes?
For sure, in a normal situation, I go to Turkey frequently, Chile, if I talk about hazelnuts, but for West Africa for sure, and also palm oil, Malaysia, and Indonesia, yes. I normally go because it's important to understand, it's important meeting suppliers, it's important meeting with some NGOs in a way that you can capture different perspectives of what's going on.
We have in Earthworm 5 key values, which are respect, truth, compassion, humility, and courage. Which one do you identify the most with?
It's a challenging question because most of these values are very aligned with mine. But I would say courage is the one for me. If you have courage, then you have really the ability to drive all the others. So if I have to pick one, I like all of them. I'm aligned with all of them. But courage for me, if I have to pick one, is the one that helps to drive all the others. That's the way I would see.
We have young people watching us and probably looking also at what they're going to do in the future, how to have an impact. And we know that many young people, they look at corporates not always in a positive way. They think, they've lost faith. What would you tell a young professional or a young student who wants to embark in a career, both about how you can impact through corporates, but also from a personal point of view? What advice would you give him?
My acid test question is the following. When I retire, right, and the first day after my retirement, I'm going to ask myself, what have I left behind? And for me, this is what drives me. That's the point about making a difference. Otherwise, what is a career for? Let's think about that, right? And the last, but clearly not least important, is about resilience. Because resilience for me, I believe today is one of the key capabilities for leadership. Because, every day there will be good news, there will be eventually not so good news, but we have to continue to pilot the plane, right? We need to take the plane for the safe landing.
Thank you, Marco. I think we've got a lot here, and it's been a great interview. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bastien, again for the opportunity. It's really nice to be able to share some professional, but even some personal experience as well. And I would like to thank also Earthworm for the support in this journey that we have for me personally, because I know Earthworm for many years already, but mainly for the program with Ferrero that we are driving now. Thank you very much.